YouTube. In this hypertrophy series, we're going to talk about a very bro concept that you will hear again and again in bodybuilding, which is shocking the muscle right off the bat. The way most people do it, I think, is not only stupid, meaning it doesn't work for muscular hypertrophy, but on top of that, it's dangerous, meaning that it can lead to injury, and it is not really conducive to anything when it comes to getting bigger. I will make a video dedicated about the topic, so I'm not going to talk too much about that. Here, instead, I'm going to give you a good way to shock your muscles so that you can promote their hypertrophy. So the way we want to do it is we want to remain within the principles of volume and intensity and specificity. That's very important. So you're going to employ certain lifting variations that are going to resemble closely lifts that you already do, but that are going to use different joint angles, different tempos, maybe a pose, maybe a different bar, so that it's going to make enough of a modification that it's going to make the difference in the way you move the bar and the way the body has to accommodate the movement pattern. That is going to be beneficial for many reasons. One, it's going to break the monotony. It's going to make you look forward to something new and exciting. Two, it's going to prevent overuse injuries, because even though you're using the same muscles, the same tendons, because you're reproducing a pattern that is very similar, you use it in just enough of a different range that it is not going to apply use on the tendons, on the structure with the same intensity and with the same application range. You will also find that because you're going to work with different type of bars, or you're going to do something that is going to change the way you move the weight, this is something that's going to help you progress. Because most of the time with these variations, they create either artificial failure, so they put you in a situation that makes the weight harder to lift, and they sometimes tend to replicate situations where the weight would have stapled you and you would have been completely unable to produce power because for some reason your form would have failed and you would have entered mechanical failure, but it's going to help you get out of that hole. For example, doing good mornings, if you do them with knee flexion, it's going to replicate what would happen if you failed on a squat, if your thoracic extension died on the squat. It would be bad if you ended up doing all your squats that way, but what's really going to happen is it's going to make you stronger in that position, meaning that once you actually do more of a knee flexion than a hip hinge and you do a normal squat, you're going to find that your thoracic extension doesn't give up as easily. That's a good way to shock the muscle. In terms of volume and intensity, this is where, to me, most of the shock should come from. Even though I do not like minimalist programs, I also realize that exercise selection does not make a program minimalist or not. You can still have a program with minimal exercise selection, but if you're very intelligent and creative with your rep ranges, with the volume and intensity, you can still create something that is not technically going to be really minimalist, because it's going to create patterns of tonnage, for example, that are going to be so different or that are going to apply so differently with certain lifts that you're going to prevent all of the issues that just doing a 5x5 on the bench for 5 years tends to create. And that, to me, is the most efficient way to shock the muscle. But this is not something that should come in and out of the program or be too erratic, because as I explained before, tonnage stability is super important. And while we do not want the tonnage to be always stable, because this would mean no progression, we don't want it to be all over the place either. So what you're going to be doing is you're going to think of volume and intensity as methods to promote progression. Meaning that your ability to put more weight on the bar, to get stronger and to drive tonnage, because it's going to be correlated with hypertrophy and gaining a bigger body and bigger muscles, is going to be your number one priority. You're going to have to apply them in that way when you think about shocking the muscle. A muscle, for example, like the quads, that is used to very high rep squats, might at some point not be as efficient at responding to that, not necessarily because it got used to it. That to me is part of the idea of shocking the muscle that I never understood. Your muscle is not going to be more proficient at that just because you practice it a lot, meaning that you will become better at it, but the muscle will not become worse at responding to it. If anything, it's the other way around. This is why this doesn't really make much sense. What is true, however, is that if you quarantine yourself within a certain volume and intensity and you always rely on this to promote progression, you might find that eventually going down, doing more intensity and less volume might be something that's going to feed into progression and help you rebound and go back to accumulating tonnage with time. And maybe it won't happen. Some people are able to stay with the same rep ranges forever and they still make good progress. But this is something that you need to have in the back of your mind if you end up falling for that idea of shocking the muscle. Everything you do needs to have stability. The fluctuations are going to come from small incremental additions of new lifting variations of exercise selection improvements in your program, or the manipulation of volume and intensity. But at no point should you tell yourself, okay, I'm going to change the entirety of the program, or okay, I'm going to completely take that lift out of it and then maybe it'll come back and it's going to be changing every week. Some people might do that because mentally speaking, it helps them stay focused, or because they get gains from it. I'm not saying that it's not possible, but I am saying that when it comes to principles that I personally apply to my training, I've always found that I could always count on specificity and lifts fitting one another to shock the muscles. And that was all I've ever needed. So that's going to be that for this episode of the Hypertrophy series about shocking the muscle. Any questions you might have, I will answer in the comments. Thank you. Have a good day.